Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Tennessee Holler Facebook Live. I'm Holler founder Justin Canoe. We're tnholler.com, at the TN Holler on Twitter and Facebook. Appreciate everybody following along and all the support you've given us. And as you know, we talk a lot about the ugly that happens and try to shine a light on some of the injustices, but we also want to lift up the good stories, the human stories, the loving stories. And there's one this week right in our backyard that we just wanted to make sure that we shine a light on and talked about. And that has to do with author Karen Kingsbury, who joins me here today. Karen, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Justin.
First of all, where are you in the world?
We are in Brentwood, so just like up the street from Franklin, Brentwood, Tennessee.
You're right here. Okay. And tell me a little bit about your relationship to Landmark Booksellers in Franklin.
Well, it was 2011, and I had a fall tour, and I was coming through town, and my editor took me to downtown Franklin, and I'd never been, and I was obviously you're amazed, you're blown away, like what did I just do? Step into a time warp? This is an incredible place. At the end of our little journey on Main Street, we went to this bookstore, Landmark Booksellers, and my editor said, "You're just going to be blown away by this store. The history is in the walls." So I walked through the doors, and sure enough, there's a smell of old books and new books. And right when you walk in the door, Joel and Carol Tomlin, the owners, greet you. They show you around and they tell you that this used to be a Civil War hospital, an old antebellum house. Like you can't replicate it, you can't replace it. And so it was probably within a couple days of leaving there that I realized, and I had asked them about it, that there'd been this terrible flood that had come through, and I didn't live here then. So the flood was a big deal. And I asked the owners, did the flood damage the store? And they said, no, our bookstore was safe from the flood, thankfully, because I don't know how we'd ever come back. And that's what started the idea for this book that I wrote called The Bridge, which is about an old bookstore set in downtown Franklin. And Charlie and Donna Barton kind of are the fictitious Carol and Joel. And it became this huge hit, this book that everyone wanted to read about. And it's about a town rallying together to save a bookstore from a flood. And ever since it appeared, like once I wrote it, then it became this hit Hallmark movie, The Bridge, and then Joel and Carol became these famous bookstore owners. People would come through the door every day looking to get their autographs, to go ahead and get a picture with them, and just have a chance to meet the real life inspiration for The Bridge. So that's my relationship with them has been very ongoing and long.
That's beautiful. And so now we find ourselves in a flood of sorts, and the virus is taking the place of the flood in your book. And what made you think of helping them in this moment? Is it you drove by, or they've always been on your mind, or how did you decide that this was something that you wanted to do?
It happened real organically. I was supposed to do a book event with them. I have a book that releases on May 5th called Someone Like You. And it's really the one that I think my readers are most anticipating. They're very excited about it. So I had a big in-person event scheduled with Landmark Booksellers, and we had to cancel it. All events had to be canceled, as you know. So it was one of those things that I called them and I said, "I'm so sorry that we can't do our event. I was really looking forward to it." And I could just hear the fear in their voice. And their voices were like, "What? You know, we're on our knees. We're trying to save this store, and we don't know what's going to happen." And I was just like, I didn't know that that was where we were at. I didn't realize that our special store Landmark, as successful as it always has been with so much foot traffic in downtown Franklin, I had no idea that they would be that close to having to shut down, to close forever. So I just jumped on Facebook Live and I went to my readers and I said, this store that inspired the bridge, like we cannot let it fall. We have to rally around them the way the characters did in the book and save it from this invisible flood, this virus. And my readers from literally not just all over the nation, but all over the world began just flooding in. So they think there'll be probably 5,000 copies of Someone Like You. So now we're saying Someone Like You saved the bookstore. So anyway, kind of works.
Beautiful. Well, and so what you asked from your readers was to go buy from this bookstore, even though there are cheaper places to get the book, right? I mean, I
That's
don't know the way the world works in terms of book selling, but there's a markup for selling or marked down on places like Amazon that you don't get on at bookstores. So you asked people to make a sacrifice, and they were willing to do it.
We had to bring a few people together. So Joel and Carol had to create an online link to pre-order because usually they don't have that. They usually have my book in when it comes. But the reason you do pay more is you get that small bookstore experience. And you get to sit on their leather sofas by the fireplace and chat with Joel and Carol. So yeah, they can't afford to discount it the way Amazon or other stores might. So yeah, I had to say, this, look, I know this is more expensive, but I'm going to ask you to buy not just one but two, like pre-order this thing. Let's show them we're going to keep it open. I mean, I think, I had to get my editors and my publisher involved too, because all of this was unconventional. They would not normally be dealing with thousands of pre-orders to a small bookstore. So they got on board and said, yeah, we'll get them all shipped to you. We'll make sure we have enough. In fact, when they do come in, I've promised to sign them all. So we're going to bring them here to the house and I'm going to sign all of them, which will take a day, I'm sure. And then we're going to go down and stand 6 feet apart and help assemble the books into packages to send them out at their parking lot.
So it's a pre-order, and people are going to go get them from the bookstore.
Yeah, so we'll mail them out, and they worked out a way to get them to Canada and to Netherlands I mean, there's people willing to pay a lot of money for postage just to be able to say I got to help save Landmark.
That's fantastic. And frankly, I think that hopefully is one of the biggest takeaways from this time is that whenever possible, we really should be buying things, going to restaurants that are run by mom and pop shops to help keep them open. The centralization of all things is what's happening. And incidents like this or times like this really accelerate that. And the part that we can play is by helping mom and pop shops and by making sure that, we spend our money in those places to help them and keep them open. So I think it's great that you did that. I think it's really a cool story that everybody backed you on that. It says a lot about your following and you as a person, probably, even though I don't know you that well. But speaking of that, what I have come to learn over the past 2 days looking into you, how do you write so many books? I mean, my goodness, you seem to be a conveyor belt of stories that people gobble up. What is the secret to being that creative and that productive, more importantly?
I'm just going to give all the credit to God. Like he puts this story in my heart like a movie. So I see the movie in my heart. And then I will outline the book, and then my first draft might take me 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm able to do a first draft pretty quickly. The editing process, the marketing process, and the release process, all that takes time. So 2 books a year that's good for me. I don't need to do more than that. But I mean, we raised 6 kids. My husband and I have been married 32 years, and we raised 6 kids, 3 adopted from Haiti. So we had a really full, fun life. And when I look back, I see those moments. Like I see us going to the zoo with the kids and taking them camping and going to the beach and playing kickball in the front yard. And I don't really even remember writing all those books. So it is just crazy. And, I think at one point, my oldest son, he was 10 and he said, Mom, when I'm older, I want to write music and I'm going to make movies. But he said, I think I'm going to write books in my spare time like you do.
That's amazing. And how has the Amazon of it all changed the process of writing? And has it been a blessing for writers like yourself? Have you felt the change, or is that more on the distribution side? I just wonder, it seems like all things run through Amazon now. Has that changed the experience of being an author?
I mean, it's tricky because it's like you said about the small bookstores. I think we can get into a habit of looking at those kinds of stores as scenery, like a fun place to go if you bring in guests from out of town. But you are right that we need to support them on a regular basis because the Amazons of the world have helped authors like me. I mean, that's not a bad thing that they have a Kindle. And I have readers who will download the book on Kindle, which really has no overhead cost, obviously, at 12:01 on release day. They want the book that badly. And they're also going to buy it from some source where they can hold it in their hands. They're that loyal. So having an Amazon, the instant gratification of being able to just click, that's it, one click buy and I've got it. That impulse buy, I think, has helped authors like me. I don't think it's hurt us, but it's not, if it's going to hurt the bookstores in general, then long term, it will hurt us. Long term, we can't be just only Amazon as your only book experience. It's not the same thing as going into a bookstore like Landmark and feeling the history in the walls and looking through and feeling the texture of the books. And they have old and rare books too, collector items. So, like, where are we going to find that if we don't have those stores?
I think those are exactly what will suffer if these stores close and people have to vote with their feet and their dollars to keep these things open. Otherwise, what's going to end up happening is, my background is in film and entertainment, and that's what's happened with video stores. Video stores are closed. Now everything's online and Netflix. And what we don't have is the experience of walking into a video store, not knowing what we're looking for, finding something old that we didn't even know about or hadn't heard of, picking it up and going and watching it. Now you sort of have to know what you're going to look for, and the discovery process has really fallen by the wayside. So I think what you're saying is really important. I just want people to know we can see the comments. Ryan Jenkins says we love Karen Kingsbury. Judy King says love this and all of them. I see Tori, my friend Tori, watching. So I appreciate you guys watching. Again, we just wanted to lift up a story of humanity and love, frankly, that Karen has encouraged her readers to buy a book through Franklin bookstore called Landmark Booksellers, that I am well aware of because I live right here near Franklin, and that hopefully a lot of people will go check out. And I think the message here is to support your mom and pop shop, support your local bookstores, support authors like Karen who do things like this. And generally speaking, it's a really heartwarming thing that this happens. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us, Karen. Hopefully now you're aware of the Holler, and we're sort of a growing thing here too. And as you have more books come out, maybe you can jump on here and talk to us about them. Real quick, can you just tell us, what is this book about that you're just releasing?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Someone Like You is, like I say, it's my most anticipated novel. And I think it's because I've hit on this subject of embryo adoption, which a lot of people don't know about. So, when people do IVF and they do an in vitro fertilization process, they usually have a couple of leftover embryos. Well, those are little babies. I mean, if they're viable, you can implant those into a woman and they will, become a baby. And so what they do is they deep freeze them, and they kind of wonder, like, will we ever use them? And a lot of people end up not needing them. And so some are just washed down sinks, but other people feel like there's a moral obligation to not just take these embryos and throw them down the sink. So they donate them to these embryo adoption centers that have sort of sprouted up in the last decade or so around the country. And there's about 500,000 babies on ice, so to speak. So this is a story of a college girl who does not know that she was an embryo adoption. She was born like anybody would be born, and obviously assumes that's her mother. And her parents always meant to tell her, but never told her this. And so this is going to rock her world and send her into a spiral of, I'm not who I thought I was, and who are my biological parents. Meanwhile, across the country, you have a guy who is madly in love with this beautiful girl who's a little bit wild, a little wilder than him. And she's always saying, I'm not the right girl for you. You'll find someone like me. And so when she ends up having a tragedy happen to her, and her mother comes clean with the fact that she was an embryo adoption, or not adoption, she was an embryo baby in vitro fertilization. And in fact, they had donated the leftover embryo. So somewhere she probably has a sibling. And this guy who is in love with her goes on this search, this quest to find who is this girl's biological related sibling, and finds this college girl on the other side of the country. And it's a quest to figure out, what does home mean? What does family mean? And it's a real story of forgiveness and redemption.
Someone Like You.
Yes, Someone Like You.
Someone Like You. Find it, read it, support Karen. She supports the bookstores of the world, and we need to support authors like her. Karen, thank you for stopping by. Stay in touch, and we appreciate you jumping on the Holler with us today.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants to, they can just go to my KarenKingsbury.com. I have a /landmark. They can read about what's happening at Landmark, or check out the video trailer. You'd like that with your video background and film background for Someone Like You. But thanks so much for having me, Justin.
We'll put those links in the show description today.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.